Central Florida agencies worked together to make an arrest in a string of vandalism, which led to a more serious crime being uncovered. TV 20's Kayla Lewis shows us some of the damage done around Stark.
Around the middle to end of October, vandalism was found throughout Stark, including right here at the Florida Twin Theater. Now, if you take a look, you'll see the word Florida at the top of this theater, which is supposed to be illuminated in neon lights. However, that's just one thing that the juveniles who were caught vandalized.
It's more than kids just being kids.
According to Bradford County Sheriff's deputies, after a house fire last Friday, they worked with Stark police officers to compare names of people who might be of interest in vandalism around the city, as well as looking at video footage. Once they saw overlapping names and video, they arrested a group of teens. During questioning, they say 2 individuals had information about the fire. They then connected 3 individuals to the arson.
You don't tend to think that things that you do in the moment to be cool with your friends are necessarily going to come back to haunt you. So just don't, it's not worth it.
The manager of the Florida Twin Theater says teenagers got up on the roof and spray painted obscene words and destroyed their neon lights and wiring, which is now costing the family-owned theater $9,000.
Just destroyed our neon lights out there, which are very expensive, especially for a small theater like us. So it's been a real struggle trying to keep these kids off of the roof. It's very dangerous for them.
Investigators say they have taken 1 juvenile to the Department of Juvenile Justice and taking charges to the state attorney's office for 3 others. In Stark, Kayla Lewis, TV 20 News.